over the last couple of weeks, we have broken down a bunch of hands. It's been the holiday season. It's been a bit hectic. Two of our favorite hands are going to get commented on and responded to by us today. It's you comment, we respond. And the first hand we want to talk about features two of pretty much everybody's favorite players.
Everyone's.
Daniel Negreanu and Phil Ivey playing heads up for the Shark Cage title back about a year ago. Anyway, if you want to see that video, click right up there, then come right on back here to check out the comments.
Right on back here.
You know, I'm a little feeling it today.
It's a good day. Yeah. It's a good day. Well, maybe these comments will bring it down a little bit. Let's find out.
I hope so. That'd be great.
Okay, so first up, if you recall, this is a really interesting hand if you didn't just watch the video. Negreanu check raises a 10-10, queen, 4.
It's a queen, 3 flop.
Whatever.
Negreanu check raises ace 4 suited.
Yeah, thank you.
His memory's going. Don't worry about it.
It's hard. You get old.
Yeah.
So that's an unusual play for sure.
Yeah.
We ended up liking it and talked about why we thought Negreanu was doing it. People had some things to say about that.
Right.
Jeremy Lin, and I don't think it's the basketball player.
But wouldn't that be sweet if it was?
It would be pretty cool. But another time we had Viffer commenting, and we didn't think it was Viffer. Turns out it was Viffer.
Right. But
so you never know.
I want to be on Jeremy Lin's radar.
Well, maybe we are. We're on this Jeremy Lin's
Hook me
radar.
up with a bounce pass, Jeremy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I'm cool with the kids.
Let's get into
Yeah.
it. The poker guys.
That's
Can
us.
you stop being results-oriented as beep? He swears there. Every video, if some random guy does something non-standard or unorthodox, you label it as bad or that you don't like it. But when a named pro, I'm just, there are air quotes. But when a named pro like Negreanu plays like a spaz, you would say it's great and deep and exploitive. Are you doing this just to avoid starting beef?
Okay, this is a type of thing we've addressed many times before. So there is a difficulty with being the poker guys and breaking down hands on such a frequent basis. It's hard to know when to give somebody credit for their resume. And sometimes you kind of have to. Like, Daniel Negreanu has such an incredible resume, we're going to assume a lot of the things that he does that we know are kind of bad in a game theory perspective are exploitive because we know Daniel understands what he's doing.
Well, let me say something else to this too. With most of the hands we do, especially against amateurs or with amateurs, when they do something non-standard, we assume that that's their normal way of playing, that's standard for them, and so we're critiquing that. We watch Daniel play hundreds upon hundreds of hands. We know this isn't standard for Daniel. So when Daniel makes a non-standard play for him against Phil Ivey heads up, and then talks about it afterward, by the way, not that we needed him to talk about it, but he makes this non-standard play, we understand that he's doing something exploitive because normally he wouldn't make this play. We see him not make this play all the time.
Right. I mean, you can say you would never give an amateur this credit. That's probably true.
Yeah.
They haven't earned the credit, right? And sometimes we kill pros and guys like you, Jeremy, say, how could you kill this pro? This guy's so much better than you. Well, sometimes pros make mistakes too.
Yeah.
In this instance, we think Daniel actually knew what he was doing.
To be fair, with us, you're talking about worrying about starting beef. We had a video like 6 weeks ago called Phil Ivey Makes a Huge Mistake, and the YouTube commenters killed us for saying Phil Ivey made what we felt was clearly a big mistake.
Right.
Even though he ended up winning the hand, we thought he played it poorly. And we thought he thought so too based on his reactions. But either way, we thought it was bad. But this, we think actually both guys play pretty great.
Yeah.
And it's just a super high level hand against two guys who know each other really, really well.
This is a comment we're going to have to deal with a lot for the rest of our lives, pretty much, right?
So we're getting used to it. Hey, here's someone else sort of asking similar type stuff. What happens if they don't explain at the end? You still give them such credit? This happens all the time in high-level tournaments and cash games, but you don't often justify players' plays as they do not explain. This is from Tom Seidel, by the way, and he says, love you guys, and puts a little X, which I think is that a kiss or a hug?
It's a hug.
It's a hug.
Let's have it be a hug.
Okay. It might be a kiss, though.
To be fair, Tom, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But we did not know about the explanation at the end when we first came up with that theory on the podcast.
Right.
That theory was come up with by Jonathan, I believe, that what Negreanu was doing was exploitive on the podcast. That was we just watched the hand and stopped.
Yeah.
We didn't actually watch the end where he explained it. So Jonathan had no idea that Negreanu explained it when he came up with that theory.
I mean, if you're watching the hand and you know who these guys are, at least I shouldn't say if you. When I watch the hand and knowing who these guys are, watching these guys having played so many hands, and Negreanu takes that line, immediately my antenna are going crazy. Like, what is Negreanu doing? He never does this.
It immediately looks bad, right? We all think it looks bad, right?
But then I think, why would he be doing this?
Yeah.
And then I see Phil Ivey's response, and I think about that hand that Phil Ivey played against Paul Jackson at the Aussie Millions heads up years and years ago.
We might do that someday.
We probably will, where it was a paired board also on the flop, and Phil Ivey 4-bet all in with nothing, right? Because Phil Ivey likes to play paired boards heads up in a particular way.
Yeah.
Negreanu knows this, And I know it enough that I was aware that, oh, this is, I think, what Negreanu's doing. And then you watch the hand play out. Negreanu deciding to check call turn and river means he is clearly check raising for value on the flop.
Yeah.
He would never turn his hand into what it is otherwise, right? Nothing changes.
Right. He turns his value hand into a bluff catcher because he understands that Ivey has a lot of floats.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And everything he's losing to is going to call him down anyway. So he knows. So that felt actually really clear to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm going to need the pros to explain it for sure.
Yeah.
And it's useful when they talk about it. Actually,
absolutely.
PokerStars often on the EPT does a pro explains, and we'll often watch that if we know about it.
Though a lot of the time the pros just give the play-by-play of the hand, but you know.
But once in a while they really do talk about it. On high stakes poker or something like that. Tom Dwan will talk about a hand, and we'll learn something about what their thought process is, and it's great.
Yeah.
You know, Tom Dwan actually in the hand where it was the 10 deuce hand, right, against Barry Greenstein and Peter Eastgate.
Yeah.
Where Tom has queen 10, sorry, it was 10 deuce, and he turns his hand into a bluff, and at the end they're all talking about it, and everyone's so sure Tom has the best hand. Tom points at Peter and says, Peter had the best hand.
Right.
And he knew exactly where Peter was, and that explains all his thought process and what he did, and we understand that, but it really helped for him to talk about it there.
Yeah, it did.
All right, you ready for the last one?
Yep.
Eric Smythe, because that's how you pronounce it. Eric Smythe 14 says, it's one of those Operation Success patient dies situations.
That's from Negreanu's perspective. That's a pretty perfect comment. Yeah.
Absolutely, everything. He got everything he wanted, except Phil Ivey is the man and was able to value bet because he knew he bluffed.
And the 6 came. That's what's unlucky.
Of course,
yeah, because Ivey's probably betting turn and river if the 6 doesn't come also.
Right, but the fact that Ivey's good enough to still bet turn and river when the 6 comes is pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome.
Our second hand is called Can Charlie Talk His Way Out of This One? And it's also from last week. It's where Charlie turns his pocket tens into a bluff on the river against Leon
Shukernik.
Leon Shukernik, very good.
Click up there. Yeah. That's the hand.
Yeah.
Check it out.
You don't need me to explain it to you. I mean, come on.
Come on, guys.
Let's get it together. There's 4 spades on the board, though. So let's hear what the folks had to say. ExTrader, frequent commenter, I might say.
I appreciate the frequent commenters. Thank you, ExTrader.
Yeah, we love it, guys. He says, what is Charlie hoping to accomplish by betting this turn? Is he planning on turning his hand into a bluff? His opponent can easily have ace-king with the ace of spades if he gets called.
Yeah, we kind of went over this more in the podcast than the video, as many of the points are gone over mostly in the podcast. In the podcast, we kind of had the same question. Like, why is Charlie betting this turn? And part of the conclusion we came to is that Charlie really gets a lot out of the physical and verbal stuff that goes on in poker. And Charlie thought that by making this small bet on the turn, he could learn so much about his opponent that would allow him to optimize his winnings or losses in that way.
Absolutely. Also, by the way, betting, he can be betting for value on the turn, and then there's certain rivers that have come that he can't bet for value anymore. And I think that's also sort of happening. He's not exactly sure where he is on the turn, but I think he thinks he's usually ahead anyway. Like, usually Leon has ace-king here in Charlie's mind, I would think, anyway. So you bet for value on the turn. A terrible card comes on the river.
Awful.
You know you're behind to pretty much everything Leon can have, and then you turn your hand into a bluff, which is what Charlie did, and somehow it worked.
Yeah.
Some miracle.
Well, Charlie's very good at the verbal game, that's for sure.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Against Leon. Hey, let's hear what maybe even Charlie himself has to say about that, shall we? Anve Upadhi says, I think you missed a very important point. Charlie said that, quote, you don't have a straight flush, and then, quote, you can't have a straight flush. Since Leon has the 9 of spades, it puts an idea in his mind that Charlie has the 10 of spades, hence he knows Leon can't have a straight flush. He even said that after, hence the whole thing with the 10 of spades that finally made him fold. Now, Charlie responded to this, which is awesome.
Thank you, Charlie himself,
Yeah. Charlie said, I opportunistically got caught out. As soon as Leon doesn't snap, I assumed it wasn't the 10 of spades, so I can rep it, and the 9 of spades if he doesn't have it. A couple other points are this. Playing on Leon's ego. He was more concerned about owning the pros on TV than winning the pot. Telling him he will look smart after he has called the 10 of spades. I don't know what that. Oh, the 10s. After he called the 10 of spades. All right. He says, like, you have the 10 of spades. So now Charlie's saying you're going to look very
you
smart.
called my hand.
Right.
Yeah, that's what Charlie's saying.
Leon, how can you buy it when Charlie says that? Come on, man. Also, my actual preflop range is kind of irrelevant. The important part is my perceived preflop range. Leon doesn't know a flatting range there is super narrow, hence being able to flat preflop super profitably. He thinks I can have any kind of middle strength hand, king 10, queen 10, ace 10, sevens, whatever. So my perceived value range, not that he would think in terms of ranges, is super wide. Then he says, thanks again for choosing my hand. Love the channel. We love you too, Charlie.
That's awesome. We are big fans of Charlie Carroll.
Oh, yeah.
And it's great that he watches the show. It's awesome. It's cool. And those are awesome points to hear.
Yeah.
Like, Charlie certainly is a verbal master. He's a young verbal master of poker, and he's kind of explaining against specifically Shukurnik what he's doing.
Yeah.
We said all of these things that Charlie's doing would be awful against Mustafa Kanat.
Right.
It's going to be first level stuff, and Kanat's just going to destroy him, right? But Charlie knows his customer. And so he knows exactly what's going on. Something we didn't pick up on is how much Shukurnik valued owning the pros.
Interesting.
Which is super cool because we know Shukurnik's a really rich guy. We just didn't know that was really his goal. So
right.
I didn't understand that's what Charlie was trying to do when he said you got it right, basically, by saying, yeah, I have the 10 of spades. That's pretty cool. That's a cool move.
It is really interesting and cool to play that. The other thing I want to point out is Charlie starts talking about the bluffs he can have, and they were all hands that we were saying in the video. Well, he obviously can't have those.
Because of pre-flop.
Right, but Leon, if he doesn't understand how narrow that flatting range can be, thinks all those might be possible.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, right?
It is cool. Charlie understands exactly who he's playing against.
Yeah.
That's important if you're going to be a verbal ninja.
That's what poker's all about, really. All right, finally, At the Bridge says, maybe the experts, I think that's us, can answer this for me. Can't Leon go all in? He has the 9 of spades, so Charlie can't have the 9-10 of spades. If Charlie has the 10, surely facing an all-in, he has to put Leon on the ace of spades. And if he has the ace, doesn't he have at least to consider that an all-in bet from someone who can't have the ace must very likely represent a straight flush? So he can only definitely call with ace-10 of spades, one combo, and surely he bets the flop with that. In which case, back to your casino and your millions with a great story to tell. Somebody tell me why this is bollocks. Great hand, though. Love the show, chaps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice comment. I don't think Charlie's ever folding the ace of spades here. I think it's a pretty clear bet fold if Charlie does have the 10 of spades, if he decides to bet the river. But Charlie's just not going to fold the ace of spades, I don't think.
It seems unlikely. I mean, you might be able to do it very exploitively against Leon. Exactly. Like, perhaps. Almost you make that James Opes level fold where you're like, he's just never going to move in with a worse spade and he's not going to bluff.
Although, as the hand was played, you can go watch it again. It's pretty hard for Shukurnik to have the 9-10 of spades.
Yes, that is part of it. Yeah. So maybe Charlie really can't do it.
And if Shukurnik's trying to own the pros, he might be more liable to move in as a bluff.
That is correct as well, right? So if Charlie thinks that,
it's just really tough to fold to one combo that's beating you.
Let's talk more about this, though. More important than any of that, whether it's going to work or not, is this point. Leon has the 9 of spades. We were calling it the third nuts in the video. It's not actually the third nuts, right? Because there's the ace-10 of spades, then the ace of spades, and then the 10 of spades. So it's the fourth nuts, really, right? But fine. That hand is way too good to turn into a bluff in this spot.
Right.
Where the only hand you're going to clearly fold out is the 10 of spades. Now, I know Charlie's acting like he has the 10 of spades, and Leon seems to be pretty sure that's what he has.
But that's once they talk about it for a long time. And if Leon moves in after all that talk, I think Charlie would know that he could probably call with the 10 of spades because of the way Leon was acting.
It's hard to know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you may also decide Leon's acting, and so he must have it because but Leon's never going to move in. Leon says, I can't beat the 10 of spades. He already said that, right? So, like, I don't know. I feel like your hand is too good to turn into a bluff here. Yes, we have a blocker, but we have a blocker where we still have the fourth nuts.
Yeah.
And it's only one bet on the river. Charlie can be bluffing. I think we just have to call.